Hey everyone, welcome to the Corban Creeps Podcast. This is a podcast for horror and special effects lovers where we dive into the behind the scenes on how films are made, and we also do an in-depth movie breakdown. So if you're interested in that, hi, my name is Bonnie and I'm your host, and today we're talking about The Substance. This is a film that greatly affected me and I thought about it every single day for a solid 6 months straight. I wanted to break down the symbolism in this movie in case you missed any of it and didn't quite understand it, or maybe just to give you a new perspective and lots of the film. It is truly near and dear to my heart and has made it into my top 4 on Letterboxd, which is a massive deal for a new film. I wanted to wish you all a happy October. I can't believe it is October 1st, and I just wanted to say a thank you for being here, for listening, for supporting me. It does mean the world, and I hope that you stick with me on this journey. I have some amazing episodes lined up. So you may know me as Bonnie Corban SFX, and I create special effects tutorials on my YouTube and my Instagram. I've been a makeup artist for about 13 years now, and I have worked in many films, TV shows, red carpet events, premieres. For today, let's just dive right in. The Substance is a gory and violent body horror film. It was released in 2024 and has a very original screenplay. There's really nothing like it. The film is written, directed, and edited by Coralie Fargett, and I find it so impressive when one person gets to bring their entire vision to life. I think you don't get a better result because that is all coming from one person's mind and they have polished it in every way that you can imagine. The film stars Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley. It has a runtime of approximately 2 hours and 21 minutes. The Substance has a score of 89% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 7.3 rating on IMDb. It's available to stream on Prime and Apple TV if you are in Australia, and probably everywhere else if you're from America. I wanted to make this podcast to merge together my love for special effects and all of the behind the scene details that go into creating a film. When I was a kid, all of my pocket money went towards buying, renting, and collecting VHS and DVDs, so my entire life I've been a massive fan of physical media, and as I said, film means so much to me. It truly, truly does. I would sit there and watch the behind the scenes sequences that were at the end of a VHS tape or in the special features sections on a DVD for hours. I would watch it for hours on end, how they've made all the studios and fake buildings, how they created all these props and prosthetics, and the amount of people that it takes to create such a large production was always so fascinating to me. And if it wasn't for those special features and behind the scenes, I may not have ever known that I could be a makeup artist. That really sparked my interest and gave me that passion, that fire to be an artist and to want to work in film, to want to create monsters with prosthetics and to transform people. I feel really lucky to have come across that at such a young age, and I still have a very large media collection at the moment. I'm constantly buying DVDs. It is a little bit unhealthy, I'm not gonna lie. I love the term movie magic because that's truly how it feels. When you see how things are made, it's so surprising how polished and perfect the final result is. That's what I love about creating content myself, whether it be a special effects tutorial or something that I'm putting up online. I love the whole creative process, learning how to film and edit and pose and do makeup. I've been able to attend so many premieres and see so many incredible films, especially within the last 2 years. I feel like horror has really revamped itself. We're getting a lot more original screenplays and a lot less remakes. I think the early 2000s was that era of those remakes that just felt good. You know, it had that nostalgic core to it and they're a little bit corny. They obviously had a lot of sex going on, but we love it. We love the 2000s core. I just really enjoy that now we're in the 2020s. We're getting all of these incredible original films. As I said, I think about this film constantly. I go back to it. It's become a comfort for me. I love watching the behind the scenes and hearing Coralie talk about all the amazing and intricate details that she put into every frame. This film is so beautiful. It is so visceral, and I think it is actually perfect. There is not a bad shot in this entire movie. What I admire about Coralie is that when she was writing the script, she knew all of the effects in this movie had to be practical. She said that this movie is about flesh and bone. It's about women's bodies, and we had to do it all for real. Coralie loves to focus on obsessive framing, which is why this film makes you feel so uneasy and uncomfortable. You can't look away, but you just constantly feel dread, and it literally just keeps getting worse the entire time. Coralie knew how much of an impact it would have on the actors to be wearing these costumes and prosthetics, to have that be their reality, to improve their performances throughout the different stages of the film. She wrote the script with all of this in mind. This is the most visceral, beautiful, and stunning film I've ever seen, and it literally does not have a bad shot. So the movie opens up with a shot of a cracked egg on blue paper. It's super striking and colorful, and this whole film is very vivid. The egg is injected on one side with a neon green substance, and then the yolk opens up from its back and duplicates itself. The next shot we get is of the Hollywood Walk of Fame. A star is being built from scratch with the name Elizabeth Sparkle. There's glitter everywhere, and we see a grand opening. She's being photographed by the paparazzi, and they're all screaming, "We love you, Elizabeth. We love you." So she's just having an absolute moment. Like, this is a very big deal. deal for her. We then see the public visiting the star and taking pictures with it because it's new, it's shiny, it's important. She is the moment. She is a star. We then cut to many decades later and the star starts to become old and cracked and people are no longer acknowledging it and they just start walking past it as it becomes irrelevant. I particularly love this part. A man is walking past the star and drops his entire burger on it and he starts to messily wipe it up and we see this red sludge and sauce all over the star as he walks away. And if you know how the movie ends, I just think that's really clever. We then see Elizabeth on set as an aerobics instructor. She was a once award-winning Oscar actress, now reduced down to a show on daytime TV. Demi was 60 at the time of filming this, and she honestly looks so fit and so beautiful, and she's playing a 50-year-old. I feel like that says a lot. Elizabeth is wearing this electric blue leotard with her entire back showing and she's performing a workout routine. When the show ends, she signs off by saying, "And in the meantime, take care of yourself." And she blows a kiss right into the camera. She then walks into this long, very Stanley Kubrick-esque hallway and it has these orange walls and patterned carpet. It's very similar to The Shining. When she enters the hallway, it has all these posters of Elizabeth all throughout her prime. These are real photos of Demi, which I do really appreciate because she is so stunning. Now, this hallway is super important because it symbolizes her slowly aging as the posters start out with her at the beginning of the hallway, very young and at the beginning of her career. And as she walks towards the end of the hallway, that is inevitably the end of her career. Cast and crew members walk past Elizabeth and wish her a happy 50th birthday. Everything seems very cheerful at this point. Elizabeth makes her way to the ladies' bathroom, except there is an out of order sign on the door. She decides to go to a stall inside the men's bathroom instead. Again, the bathroom is very striking. It has colourful red doors and this iconic square white tiles with black grout all throughout, which is a very common running theme that you're going to be seeing in this movie. Dennis Quaid plays Harvey, a sleazy TV executive. He barges through the bathroom door like an arrogant pig and he's on the phone. He walks up to the urinal, which gives us a really close-up, almost fisheye shot of his face. Coralie said that she wanted him to take up all of the space and it was as if he was pissing on the audience, which I think is crazy, but genuinely I really love that she thought of that. He's screaming into the phone while he's peeing, "We need her hot, we need her young, we need her now." He then starts to slander Elizabeth while she's inside the stall. She's hiding in the stall. This really, really, really hurts my heart. How has this old bitch been able to stick around for so long? Oh, Oscar winner, my ass. He then says a women's fertility starts to decrease at the age of 25, and then he laughs and just walks out of the room without even washing his fucking hands. We then see Elizabeth walk out of the stall, and she just looks so broken. She's staring into the mirror as if she's seeing herself in the light that he does, as if all of those things that he has just said about her is true. We then cut to the iconic title card that says Elizabeth. Elizabeth and Harvey are sitting at a fancy restaurant. We have these extreme obsessive close-up shots and these horrible sound effects of Harvey eating prawns. He's ripping off their heads. He has juice running all over his hands and onto the tablecloth. It is actually really disgusting. I'm not gonna lie. Everybody who watches this film says it's probably one of the worst scenes, and it's so funny because all he's doing is eating food. Coralie does an incredible job at making you feel so uncomfortable and uneasy when you see food in this film. I remember when I saw this in the theater, I looked to my husband and I was like, I've never seen a film like this in my life. What the fuck? I was like really confused because I didn't watch the trailer. I just heard it was incredible. I missed the premiere, unfortunately, because I was traveling at the time and I wished, oh my God, I wish I could have been there, but I saw it very, very soon after on opening weekend. So I still feel very lucky to have had that initial experience before the internet just took it and ran with it. Fun fact, Dennis Quaid actually ate 2.2 kilos of prawns throughout the filming of this scene, happily. Harvey then tells Elizabeth, I have to give the people what they want. Renewal is inevitable. And at 50, everything stops. Elizabeth says, what stops? And he just ignores her entirely. He jumps up mid-sentence, runs over to a friend of his, they laugh, they're super loud and super obnoxious, and that's it. He just leaves. As Elizabeth sits there, coming to terms with the fact that she's just lost her job, we get a close-up shot of a fly drowning in a glass of wine, and Coralie says that these are her hero shots, which I could not agree with more. These shots are what make this film so unique, and a lot of people told Coralie to cut them out, and I'm so glad that she didn't, and she went with her vision. We now cut to Elizabeth driving through Hollywood. She gets distracted by a large billboard of herself getting torn down. Then she unexpectedly gets into a serious car crash. It's pretty brutal. This definitely was a jump scare for me because I just wasn't prepared for it or expecting it. As if she hasn't had the worst birthday getting fired, then she's in a car crash. Elizabeth is in the hospital, sitting on the edge of the bed, just looking catatonic. Her back is exposed in the hospital gown, which is a reoccurring shot throughout this film. The doctor appears to be in his 50s and he has a young, handsome nurse by his side. He says, "It looks like your lucky day, x-rayed from head to toe and not even a cracked molar. Oh, by the way, my wife is a huge fan." And Elizabeth just stares blankly at the ground. The doctor is reading her paperwork and says, "Oh, look, it's your birthday. Happy birthday." Elizabeth just starts sobbing, and rightfully so, honestly. She's just lost everything that she cares about. The doctor then gets paged and he says, "Well, you're all good to go." And then he just kind of awkwardly leaves the room. The nurse rushes over and says, "One moment, there's just one more thing I have to examine." And we notice that he has this large purple birthmark on his hand, which you do need to remember for later on. Elizabeth says, "Well, I thought the doctor said I was good to go." She looks incredibly uncomfortable and he starts to unbutton her gown. He checks her spine and says, "You're a good candidate. I mean, you're good to go. I wish you the best." We then see Elizabeth outside the hospital wearing this iconic yellow wool trench coat. She puts her hand in her pocket and finds a USB drive wrapped in this handwritten note saying, "It changed my life." The USB has the substance written on the front and a mobile number on the back. She's then startled by an old high school classmate. He runs up to her with so much excitement. "Lizzie? Hey Lizzie, it's Fred from 10th grade homeroom," and she literally has no idea who this guy is, but she goes along with it and tries to be polite. He says, "You haven't changed a bit. You're still the most beautiful girl in the whole wide world." Gut-wrenching. That moment for me, the most beautiful girl in the whole wide world, kills me. Literally heartbreaking. Because after this, we just see how much she starts to hate herself and hate her body more as the film progresses. He says, "I followed your career. It's amazing. We should get a drink one time. Now we're reconnected." And she tries to politely turn him down. And he's like, no, you're right. Sorry, it's stupid." But she decides to take his number. He writes it down on a piece of paper and then he drops it in a pile of mud. She just picks up this soggy piece of paper and puts it in her pocket. They kind of awkwardly say goodbye. Throughout this movie, you start to realize that her career was her whole life. She doesn't really seem to have any family or friends. We then cut to Elizabeth's beautiful apartment. It looks like a penthouse with these huge windows and an insane view of LA. She has this massive blown up picture of herself framed on the wall, which is very vain. And she just doesn't really seem to have any photos of family or meaningful belongings. It's just this immaculate apartment with shelves of awards and pictures of herself. As she gets home, there's this beautiful bouquet of roses on the table from the producers, and a note says, "You were amazing." Just really rubbing it in there, you know? Elizabeth plugs the substance USB into her TV and we get one of the coolest promotional videos I've ever seen. I would do the substance. I mean, if I saw this, I'd be like, hell yeah. The video says, "Have you ever dreamt of a better version of yourself? Younger, more beautiful, more perfect. One single injection unlocks your DNA, starting a new cellular division that will release another version of yourself. This is the substance. You are the matrix. Everything comes from you and everything is you. It's just a better version of yourself. And you just have to share 1 week for one week for the other. The only thing not to forget, you are one. You cannot escape from yourself." And the video has the most iconic soundtrack in the back. Very 80s themed, and we hear this eerie siren going off. You would know it if you know anything about this film. The video ends and the screen cuts to static. Elizabeth rips out the USB and we get this really cool shot of the inside bottom of her bin where she throws it and it just sinks to the bottom of the trash. Later that night, we see Elizabeth and she's all dressed up like she's going to a black tie event. She's in this beautiful floor-length sparkly gown and she's sitting alone in a dimly lit cocktail bar. There's this close-up of an olive getting stabbed with a toothpick as Elizabeth is sinking her fourth martini. She puts the empty glass next to the others on the bar. We see her sitting on a stool, again in a backless dress with this harsh overhead lighting, showing all of the age and imperfections on her skin. It makes you feel uneasy and you don't really know why, but her back is such a massive focal point in this film. Elizabeth looks over at a younger, hot couple and they're giggling, they're kissing each other on the neck, and she just puts her head down and her arm in the air and just signals the bartender for another drink. We then get a shot of her in this dark hallway looking into her bathroom. She's in that beautiful ball gown, hunched up around the toilet, violently vomiting, and we've all been there, I get it. She washes her face in the sink and there's mascara running all down her cheeks, and she just looks at herself in the mirror with such hatred. We start to see the interior shots of her apartment and it looks really sad and sterile, shots of her awards and her medals, and she picks up this snow globe with these sparkles in it and a figurine of herself when she was unveiling her Hollywood star. She can hear the paparazzi screaming, "We love you, Elizabeth," and this pisses her off and she throws the snow globe at this picture of herself that she has framed on the wall. smashing the glass's face all across her eye. We then see her desperately fishing out the substance USB from the bottom of the trash, combing through all this old rubbish and food. She sits on the edge of her bed and she's still in this beautiful gown and she just looks absolutely defeated. Elizabeth calls the number on the back of the USB and asks to place an order of the substance. The man on the phone gives her an address and she quickly writes it down on the palm of her hand and he abruptly hangs up on her. We cut to the next morning and she's in her bed still wearing last night's clothes. She's hungover and takes a shower in that iconic bathroom with the white tiles and black grout. You do see a lot of full nudity in this film as well, if I haven't already mentioned that. It's quite obvious it's about female bodies, so you're going to be seeing a lot. We get this overhead shot of her in the shower and she looks incredible to me. I think she's so fucking beautiful. It's so sad to see the hatred that she has for herself throughout this film, and this is pretty much the beginning of where it all starts. She sits at her kitchen table in a robe and there's a cleaner vacuuming her house in the background. Elizabeth puts what looks like an aspirin in a glass of water and then opens up the newspaper. There is an ad that reads, "Who will be the next Elizabeth Sparkle? Looking for a youthful, vivacious, high-energy woman to be a part of a new TV show. Females aged 18 to 30 only. Auditions at the studio this Friday. Dress to impress." The camera zooms in particularly on the ages 18 to 30 only, and she scrunches it up and throws it on the ground. Elizabeth has this pile of letters on her table, and she starts to go through all of her mail. She sees this black envelope with a logo that says The Substance. She opens the letter, and the only thing that's in there is a key card with the number 503. She looks at her hand, and she still has the faded address written on her palm, and she gets dressed to leave. I find it really funny because she's wearing that bright yellow coat again, so this is her idea of being low-key. She's got a pair of gloves on and sunglasses. We cut to Elizabeth, and she's walking fast-paced through the streets of Hollywood, and then she starts to end up in a very dodgy-looking area full of sirens, graffitis, dogs barking, and barbed wire fences. As she approaches the address, it's spray-painted above the graffiti roller door, which Coralie actually did herself. I saw that in the behind the scenes, and I just love all the small details she puts in this film. Elizabeth scans her card, and the roller door only opens halfway, and she scans it multiple times, but nothing happens, so she decides to crawl underneath. We get this shot of this really dark hallway, and it leads to this bright, white, and pristine-looking locker room. There's about 20 lockers in there. Hers is 503, and there's only one other locker labeled 207. She taps her card and takes out the cardboard box labeled 503. We then cut to Elizabeth sitting at home at her small dining table, and there's basic instruction cards with all of these cryovac bags of medical equipment with needles, bags of food labeled Matrix and food other self, and of course we have the green vial of the substance with a clear sticker on it that we get a close-up shot that says specifically, single use only, discard after use. The instructions are really simple. You activate only once, you stabilize every day, you switch every 7 days without exception. Remember, you are one. We get a flat lay of all the equipment on the table, and to be honest, if I kind of saw that, I'd be like, nah, I'm out. I don't know about the needles. I don't know if I can do this. We cut to later that night. Elizabeth is naked in her bathroom and she's standing in front of the mirror. Again, she's looking at her body with very unkind eyes. She takes the activator and extracts it into the syringe and ties off her arm with a rubber band that was supplied. We then get a shot of Elizabeth injecting the substance into her arm. Now, this is so cool because Coralie actually injected herself with a medically safe green substance. The dedication this woman has to creating this film is literally unmatched. She injects herself with the substance without any hesitation and then just exhales and stares at herself in the mirror waiting for something to happen. And she kind of chuckles to herself because she thinks it was all a waste of time. Out of nowhere, Elizabeth drops to the ground and hits her head on the tiles. She starts groaning and contorting and her body starts moving and squishing around as if there's something under her skin and inside. They created these hyper-realistic torsos to manipulate the body for this scene to make it look like there's something inside and underneath her skin moving around. Her back splits open down the center and we get this close-up shot of her iris where it separates into two separate irises with two separate eye colors. At this point, everyone in the audience was speechless. No one's seen a film like this before, and if you hadn't seen the trailer, you really had no idea what to expect. We then get a shot of what looks like a slimy human arm starting to emerge from her back cavity. We get these insane visuals of these lights spiraling on the screen, and this is called the tunnel of lights. It was all practically made. Coralie said she wanted that raw energy. Of course, they could have used CGI, but the manipulation of the camera throughout the tubes is what created that journey, and honestly, I'm so impressed. We then get a shot of Elizabeth's lifeless body with this huge split down her back. There's plasma, blood, and green goo all over the floor. You can hear this heartbeat and really heavy, strained breathing, and the sound effects in this film are immaculate. They truly bring the story to life. You see this glossy hand appear on the screen, and the camera lifts up as the person stands up. This is by far my favorite part of the film, and honestly, when I saw this, I was like, fuck yeah, this is going to be incredible. We see a blurry shot of the new body walking over to the fogged up mirror, and as she wipes the mirror with her hand, it reveals this glossy, glowing, youthful body. Everything that Elizabeth wanted to be. She's in absolute disbelief. She takes a step back to look at herself in the mirror. Margaret is wearing a pair of prosthetic breasts, and I tell you what, they're fucking perfect. She looks great. We get this close up of her bright blue eyes in the mirror, and you see this flash of neon green substance in her iris, so you can tell that it's running through her veins. Sue is just standing there in the mirror admiring her naked body, and I love that she still has the same birthmark that Elizabeth does on her stomach. And remember that because that is going to be important later. She's obviously ecstatic, but then the gravity of the situation kind of hits her as she turns around to see Elizabeth's body unconscious and just torn apart on the ground. This causes Sue to vomit up this neon green liquid all over the floor. She wastes absolutely no time and gets straight into sewing up this wound. It is so up close. You watch the needle and thread go through every part of her skin, and it really is horrible. If you have a fear of needles, this is going to really trigger you. Once the sewing is all done, Sue attaches the matrix food onto the feeding tube into Elizabeth's wrist, and she immediately starts to breathe. Sue just sits there with her hands in her head. She's naked on the edge of the bathtub, and she's contemplating like, what the fuck have I gotten myself into? And I really love this shot as we zoom out down that dark hallway. Sue is laying in bed. Her eyes are just wide awake, and she's in pure shock, staring at the ceiling, thinking, what have I actually just done? We then cut to the next morning, and there's this bright blue sky, and Sue decides to take a shower. We get the same overhead shot and close-ups, except this time Sue is running her hands all over her body, admiring her skin and her brand new figure. And we also get shots at the same time of Elizabeth's body stitched up and bloody on the bathroom floor. Sue puts on her robe, and then she starts to speak. Hello, into the mirror. She's like, hello. Oh, like finding her voice. She starts to bleed from her nose. She's frantically looking through the cabinet and the cupboards to find the stabilization tube. She sticks a needle into Elizabeth's back to extract all of this spinal fluid. Her ears are ringing, and this is a really intense scene because you don't know if she's just going to die or melt or explode. You just really have no idea. She stabs herself in the leg and injects herself with the spinal fluid, and within seconds, she is absolutely fine. She throws out the cartridge with the number 7 on it into an empty bin. So now she has 6 more days ahead of her as Sue. This is when we start to see Sue in the beginning of her prime. Her hair is all blown out. She's super sexy. She looks really gorgeous. She's walking around her apartment in her underwear and a cute little crop top, strutting around. Like, this is it. This is the vibe. This is what she wanted. We see Sue sitting in the lounge room, and she's doing the splits just casually and looking out at the beautiful view. She's doing these warm-up stretches as if she's going to go dance or perform. And as she's stretching from side to side, we see that massive framed photo of Elizabeth on the wall behind her. And it's kind of just reminding you that she's inside Sue's body. This is her new reality. This is the new person that she is. And Margaret Qualley, the actress that plays Sue, she is a professionally trained dancer, so she really is perfect for this role. As Sue is stretching from side to side, we notice her look over to the bin, and she sees the newspaper scrunched up with the ad for the next Elizabeth Sparkle. And like, at this point, you're like, please don't do it. Don't do it. We then cut to Sue, and she's wearing that bright yellow trench coat, and she's walking down Hollywood Boulevard shopping for an entire new wardrobe. As Sue is walking past this one shop in particular, we see this bright pink leotard on a mannequin. We then cut to a scene of these 2 gross-ass men. They're sitting at this table in an audition room while this beautiful girl is performing her dance routine. When she leaves the room, they comment, great dancer, too bad her boobs aren't in the middle of her face instead of that nose. And fuck. I find that sickening. I hate hearing this shit. They call out, next, and then Sue struts in. She has that tight, hot pink leotard on, and the men look at each other and they say, sure looks like everything's in the right place this time. Please say your name, age, and measurements. So sterile. Absolutely hate that. We get this cool kind of 360 shot of Sue's body and the entire outfit that she's wearing, from her sneakers and her leg warmers to her bronzy glowing skin. We get a close-up of her breasts. We get a close-up of her ass, just really giving the whole fantasy. She has this soft blushed makeup look on, and we get the iconic moment of this close-up of her lips where she whispers, I'm Sue. And Margaret Qualley has a gap in her teeth, which is so stunning and beautiful. My grandmother has the same thing, which I've always admired. Harvey storms into his office, and immediately he's obsessed with Sue. His eyes light up and he storms in with a group of creepy-ass men wearing suits. Where is she? Where is she? And we get the title card, Sue. Harvey spins her around to get a good look at her up and down, and he calls her a gorgeous little angel. And he lights a cigarette, and we get a close-up of his yellow, disgusting, stained teeth. He simply says, you're hired. We want to show that he's just like you, beautiful and happy. Sue is absolutely giddy, and she's so over the moon. And now I find this really interesting because Sue and Elizabeth share the same consciousness. It's so strange to me that Elizabeth doesn't hold resentment towards this man. Completely gullible. She's a completely different person. She's this young woman with a whole life ahead of her, and she seems very naive, has no idea really the dangers of what she's getting herself into. And the craziest part is that she's lived this entire life already and she knows how it ends. So while they do share the same consciousness, I do believe that Sue and Elizabeth are very much two different people, considering they are one. Harvey says, "We start in 2 weeks. I'll organize the rest." And his receptionist is standing right next to him and he just can't remember her name. Issa. And the woman says, "Isabel?" And kind of like looks at him like, the fuck? Literally, he doesn't even remember her name. And then he goes on to taunt her in front of Sue and goes, "Issa. We don't have time to say that. I'm going to call you Cindy." Sue doesn't even bat an eye. She literally just cares about fame. And that's why I'm saying, like, how is that Elizabeth in there if she doesn't even give a fuck? Like, she doesn't even find that offensive. She's just so excited for this new job. And I really got to say, Dennis Quaid does the best job at making you hate him in this film. He is an absolute sleazebag. So Sue's sitting there in Harvey's office and she speaks really softly. "Oh, I do have to mention one small scheduling issue. I have to be out of town every other week to take care of my sick mother." Making this shit up on the spot, obviously. We get this really intense moment because Harvey puts his cigarette out super aggressive and you're not really sure about what he's going to say. He walks around and sits right down in front of her, gets right up in her face. To my surprise, he says, "I want you. We will work around any mother, brother, fucking sick puppy that you need to take care of." And she just giggles and he says, "Oh, gorgeous with a pure heart. People are gonna love you." We now cut to day 6 and Sue injects herself with more of that spinal fluid that she has in that massive tube right into her leg, and her eyes widen and she immediately looks super fresh and super well rested. We then see a compilation of her getting all these headshots in that sexy pink leotard on set. We get a compilation of Sue training for her new aerobic show. She's with all her backup dancers and she's beginning her career all over. We see Sue out in Hollywood buying herself a much younger and sexier wardrobe. Later that night, we get this incredible transition of Sue standing in front of her window wearing this navy robe with a gold dragon on the back. The dragon turns into flames, which is all done practically. They had built like a dragon flame on the ground and overlaid it, and it just blends perfectly to transition into the next day, and that symbolizes a new beginning from fire. So that's it. The first week is complete. Sue inserts the switching tube that swaps blood between the two bodies, and then she passes out naked on top of Elizabeth. After a week of eating from a tube and not having any consciousness, Elizabeth wakes up screaming, being suffocated by the weight of Sue's body laying on her chest. Elizabeth is super weak and she's screaming in agonizing pain because she literally has the entire of her back split open and stitched back together. She takes a moment to admire Sue's body on the ground and then she cooks herself a meal. The way that food is portrayed in this movie is disturbing and so unique. As I mentioned earlier, Elizabeth is starving, so she's sitting there eating these 2 fried eggs, again, very similar to the beginning of the film. All throughout this film, Elizabeth has a downward spiral and indulges in food as a comfort, and where on the other hand, we never see Sue eat. She just walks around and looks hot and drinks Diet Coke all day. Now, we see Elizabeth's wounds in the shower, and this is nasty. It's really brutal. It's really up close. We get that overhead shot. Her entire spine is bleeding, it's oozing, it's stitched up in the most horrible way you've ever seen in your life, and it just looks so painful. We then see Elizabeth heading back to her workplace to collect a box of all of her old belongings. And remember when I said earlier about the orange hallway, that the beginning of the hallway was the beginning of her career? Where do you think she's standing now? Elizabeth enters and she's standing at the end of the hallway, at the end of her career. All the photos of her have been completely removed, and we just get this last little glimpse of the last photo getting carried out by these removalists. So it's just like there is no trace. Everything that was there is now gone, and she has been permanently erased and forgotten, essentially. Harvey starts racing down the hallway, and he's so cheerful, and he throws the box into Elizabeth's hand. He's so condescending. He's such a fucking smartass, this guy. He has this wrapped present, and he grabs it out of the box really rough, and then throws it back in there and says, "Oh, we got you something to keep you busy." Spoiler alert, it's a cookbook. Harvey then says, "It's French. My wife swears by it." Oh God, I love my wife. How I love my wife. He's so ridiculous. He pisses me off. He then says, "I've got to run. Always great to see ya," and then just sprints off down the hallway. Couldn't care less about her. Elizabeth heads home and she starts to plan out on her calendar what days of the week she'll be Sue, and then she just draws crosses on the days that she's going to be herself, which I only noticed like on my 4th watch. And I find that really sad. She doesn't even put a name to herself. She's like, Sue, 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 and then just all these X's on the days that she is Elizabeth. It's almost like those days don't matter, so she just puts X's on them, and unless she's Sue, it doesn't really mean anything. This is when Elizabeth starts to become a bit of a recluse, and she wastes her entire day sitting in a lounge chair, staring at the TV, and she just wears her bathrobe and indulges in all of this food. She literally does nothing with her life when she is Elizabeth. After 7 days of doing literally nothing, Elizabeth swaps back to Sue, and immediately life is good. Sue is all dolled up. She looks so hot. She's so beautiful. She's walking around the house just strutting, looking very confident, very happy to be back. And she notices this ass groove in the couch, and she looks over at the lounge chair, and there's all these dirty dishes in the house, and she grabs the remote and turns the TV off. You can see that she has a bit of disgust, realizing that all Elizabeth has done for 7 days is rot in a chair. This is the beginning of when Sue and Elizabeth start to hate each other, and this is where all of the kindness kind of ends. Sue starts to see Elizabeth as a waste of time, and she immediately starts knocking down a wall in her bathroom so that she has an empty space behind it to hide her body. She doesn't want Elizabeth to be in sight, she doesn't want to think about her, and she definitely doesn't want to see her. Because of all the construction noises, we see a really angry neighbor just smashing on the door, and he's screaming, "God damn it, I can't sleep." And what do you know, when Sue opens the door, his reaction entirely changes. His demeanor, different. He's struck by how gorgeous and tall she is that he can't even string together a sentence or pronounce his own fucking name. This is a great commentary on how men treat women that they are attracted to versus women they're not attracted to. He was pulling up at the door to scream his lungs out at Elizabeth, and then as soon as he saw Sue, he was all soft and kind-hearted and lovely, and then he even offers to help her with the construction and says, "Wow, it's cool. I just love when stuff goes on in the building. If you need any help, you know where to find me." And she just rolls her eyes and slams the door in his face, rightfully so. Once the construction is all done, Sue wastes no time, and she just carelessly drags Elizabeth's body into the dark, empty room that she's built for her behind her bathroom wall. And she wants nothing to do with her. She starts to hide away all of her belongings, and she just wants to leave her in a dark room and forget all about that part of herself that still exists. And it's sad because when Elizabeth is inside of her own body, you see her doing the exact same thing. All she does is hide away, eat food, watch TV, and never really seems to go outside and enjoy the world. She just doesn't want to exist unless she is Sue, and I hate that. That is not the purpose of the substance, but unfortunately that's just how this story goes. Now we get one of the most memorable scenes of this entire film, the Pump It Up with Sue segment. And this is a highly sexualized dance routine where essentially they're all greased up, they're all twerking on each other, and it's definitely not focused on fitness like the previous show. We get a remix version of Pump It Up playing in the background. It's a really cool sequence. It's Sue with all of these backup dancers in these colorful tight leotards. Sue ends the episode saying, "Thank you so much, everybody," and then she goes to run off set. And I love this part because she remembers and then turns around and goes, "Oh, and in the meantime, take care of yourself." And then she blows a kiss into the camera exactly as Elizabeth did, and then she does this cheeky little wink. So it's like reminding you that Elizabeth is in it somewhere and she's thriving. She's kind of loving being Sue. The lights of the production shut off, and the whole cast and crew, all the backup dancers, they're cheering and they're celebrating. As Sue walks out the doors into the beginning of that hallway, what do you know? She looks to her left and we see her first frame picture on the wall of her career. She stands there and admires it for a second, because this is a fresh start. She's excited. And then we cut to later that night. Sue's starting to feel like a god, so she gets dressed up in this skin-tight snake body print suit. She has this hot red lipstick on, heavy glam makeup, and a pair of knee-high boots. I love how direct the symbolism is here because she's a snake shedding her skin. As soon as I saw her in a snake print outfit, I knew immediately that that was like her shedding her skin and that it was a metaphor, but sometimes those things go over your head when you're watching a film that's just so bright and visceral and fast-paced. Sue visits Elizabeth's body and it's laying in the dark room, and she whispers, "I'm not going to be out late. Don't eat too fast, okay?" And we get this shot of the food bag. It's literally about to dry up. Like, girl, how long are you going to be? What do you mean don't eat too fast? We don't know what the repercussions are here of her running out of food, so this is like really dangerous and stupid, but Sue is young, so, you know, she's going to do it anyway. Fuck it. We see her jump into this Mustang with a bunch of her new friends, and they're all sitting on top of the seats. No seatbelts, no nothing. They drive off and they all scream, "You, let's go." Like, let's get reckless, you know? Sue's out. She's partying. She's having the time of her life. And we cut to Elizabeth and her food bag is completely dried up. And at the exact same time, we see Sue has brought home this handsome man that rides a motorbike. They're about to have sex. He starts to unzip the back of her bodysuit and she starts taking off his pants. At the exact same time, we cut to Elizabeth and she's starting to suffocate. She literally can't breathe. She has no food left. And immediately this affects Sue. She starts to become disorientated. She starts bleeding from her nose. And we get the shot of her running down the hallway. Her ears are ringing and she locks herself in the bathroom. She grabs an old cartridge out of the bin and extracts extra spinal fluid, going against all of the rules that are on the paperwork. Sue injects herself with the spinal fluid and she goes straight back to the couch to bang. The guy asks, "What did you do in there? You look even more beautiful than before." We get this awesome shot of the guy unzipping the back of her suit and then all of her organs and this blood start to spill out. It's so gory and gross. I only noticed this on my 4th time watching the film, but Elizabeth wakes up screaming in pain. So the organs on the ground, that was a nightmare. The first thing that Elizabeth does is rolls over Sue's body and checks her completely from head to toe. Just disregards herself, the pain that she feels. She's just so worried that something happened to Sue. And it is really sad to see those little moments sprinkled throughout the film because it just starts to get worse. Due to the lack of food and the extra hours taken, the extraction site on Elizabeth's back, where all of the spinal fluid comes from, is severely inflamed. Elizabeth stumbles down the hallway and she finds the apartment absolutely trashed. There's alcohol bottles everywhere, there's takeout, there's rubbish, and Elizabeth sees the motorbike helmet on the table and there's a sticky note on her window and it says, "Too drunk to take the bike home, keep an eye on her, Troy." And then it has his phone number on the bottom. Elizabeth goes to take the sticky note off the window and she realizes that one of her fingers is super old and decrepit. It almost looks like a witch finger. It's all deformed and aged and rotted. She runs to the bathroom and starts violently washing her hands to try to get rid of it or clean it off, but obviously it's not coming off. She then turns around to see the extraction site in her spine and it's super infected. It didn't heal properly because obviously she was malnourished. Elizabeth immediately calls the substance number, saying that there may have been a misuse of the substance and it was just a few hours, accidentally lost, causing an alteration, and I'm just looking for the procedure to reverse it. And this is one of the parts that I love because the guy that works for the substance just has no time for this shit. The man calmly says, "What has been used on the other side is lost to the other and there's no going back." And oh my God, there fucking is. Like, it's quite literally what we do to ourselves now. As a young person, you go out, you party, you drink, you smoke, you do drugs, and you don't care about the consequences of your older self. You're directly taking time and life and health from your future self. So when you use something on one side, you don't get it back. I love this. This is one of the things that really stuck in my head once I watched this film, which is why I say it's such a experience, because if you know what this film is about and you understand it, it really hits home. That's exactly what this metaphor is. It's just showing it in a very literal way. So Elizabeth's in shock. She's absolutely outraged and she's really upset. And the guy on the phone is so blunt. It's literally hilarious. Elizabeth is pleading. She was drunk and I don't know what she was thinking. And he just says, "There is no she. Remember you are one. Respect the balance and you won't have any more inconveniences." And he just hangs up on her. Elizabeth is fucking pissed. So she gets the motorbike helmet, she throws it down the hallway and she slams the door shut. And this is the first time in the film that we see her doing her own housework. So she's cleaning up all of this mess, the alcohol, the trash, the takeout. As she's doing the housework, we see on her TV the premiere of Pump It Up with Sue. And she's stunned. She stops cleaning and she stares at the TV. Elizabeth becomes entranced. She's watching Sue on the screen. She's so youthful and beautiful and flexible and she's dancing, she's twerking. And then out of nowhere, she gets the shits and just switches it off. She can't watch the rest of the episode. So as I said, you can really start to see the hatred building between the two parts of herself. Sue hates Elizabeth and Elizabeth hates Sue. Immediately after the episode aired, the doorbell rings. It's the creep neighbor. He's calling out, "Hey Sue, I just saw you on TV. You don't give private lessons, do you? Do you want to have a drink at my place tonight?" And then he starts singing the Pump It Up theme song and like dances down the hallway. "You've got to pump it up." Like, I fucking hate this guy. He's a piece of shit. We then see Elizabeth heading out of the house only because she needs to get another refill of the food. She's wearing even more layers to further hide her appearance. While she's in the locker room, room picking up her package, she hears this noise and then she panics and she starts running down the road into this random diner. Elizabeth sits down and she goes to remove her gloves, remembers how gross her finger is, and she's super disgusted and hides it from the waitress. After she orders a coffee, she looks at this very old man opposite her and he's shaking. It looks like he has Parkinson's and he's trying to drink a coffee. He says, "It's long, isn't it?" Elizabeth replies, "Excuse me?" The man looks at her and says, "7 days." And the camera pans down. He's holding a coffee cup and he has a purple birthmark all over his hand. So now we know this is the nurse from the beginning. And I don't know how he started at the beginning of the substance, but this guy is old. He is decrepit. He doesn't have long, if you know what I mean. He then drops his wallet on the ground and we see the key card for the locker number 207. Elizabeth says, "Did you follow me here?" And he admits, "Yeah, I did. I was curious to see how things are going for you." And he sounds really genuine, like he does seem to actually care. The man says, "Each time you feel a little bit more lonely." And Elizabeth denies everything. She's like, "I'm fine. Everything's fine." The man then says, "It gets harder every time to remember that you still deserve to exist, that this part of yourself is still worth something and that you still matter." Elizabeth gets up and she starts to run out of the diner and we hear the man scream, "Has she started yet? Eating away at you?" Like at this point, Elizabeth's finger destroyed. If she would have stopped the experiment here, would have been a very different outcome, right? Elizabeth freaks out. She runs out of the diner and then she bumps into Mr. Motorbike Man and his helmet goes flying down the road. He screams at her, "Watch the fuck out." And then he gets on his bike and kind of almost threatens to run her over and says, "Move." And then she's standing there in shock as he speeds away. It is really sad and super disrespectful to see how horribly that he spoke to Elizabeth. The day prior, he's in the apartment saying to Sue, like, "Oh my God, you're a goddess," thinking she's the most beautiful girl in the entire world. And then he's just screaming and treating Elizabeth like shit. So you can completely understand why Elizabeth feels the way she does about herself. If these are the interactions she's having with people. When she is Sue, people love her. They are praising her. They think she's the most beautiful thing on earth and she's super important. And then Elizabeth just gets yelled at left, right, and center. At this point, I would have just stopped taking the substance. If I saw the guy with Parkinson's, like, and my finger, I would be like, "I can't trust this bitch. I'm done. I'm out." Genuinely, I'd be like, "It was fun. I've had enough." After the incident with the motorbike guy, Elizabeth races upstairs and she finds a box of her belongings in the back of the wardrobe that says Elizabeth's old stuff. She fishes out her handbag and grabs out Fred's mobile number and she just like holds it to her heart. So she calls him and he's in absolute disbelief. He can't even speak. They start to organize a dinner reservation for that night and he's like, "I'm just in shock. I'll book Luigi's at 8. They were both like, "Okay, see you tonight." Now this is the most gut-wrenching scene in the entire movie. It had me in fucking tears and I still think about it all the time because I experienced this shit and most women do. And it's a really, really hard scene to watch and it just breaks my heart every single time. Never gets any easier. There's just this feeling of when you're getting ready for an event and you don't feel your best and you don't feel great, you don't feel beautiful, and you hate your hair, you hate your makeup, you hate your outfit, you feel like you don't deserve to go to the event, you feel like you don't want to be seen. And that's exactly what this represents, and it is really, really hard to watch. It makes you sad to think about it. We see Elizabeth and she's all dressed up. She's in her bedroom and she puts on this beautiful cocktail dress, this long black pair of gloves to hide her finger. She's putting on this red lipstick. She has the most stunning makeup on, her long jet black hair. And we look at the clock, it's 7:30. She's perfectly on time. She looks stunning and she's ready to leave. As she closes the door behind her in the bathroom, she sees Sue's body lying on the ground and she just starts to admire it. She's obviously comparing the youthfulness, the plumpness, her lips, her skin, her breasts, and she no longer feels good enough. She was so close to leaving, but she saw Sue's body, walks back over to the mirror, and just doesn't feel like she's enough. We then see Elizabeth start to reapply her makeup and touch it up, and this progressively just makes it look worse. Her eyeliner's getting thicker, her lips, she's shaking, she's trembling, she starts putting on way too much blush. As she starts to apply the makeup, we keep getting shots of the clock, and the time keeps getting later. It starts to build stress. I feel stressed, she feels stressed, she's running out of time, she doesn't look good, she's starting to freak out. I've had enough of feeling like that, you know? She walks out into her lounge room ready to leave and grabbing her coat. And unfortunately, Elizabeth looks up at that really big, beautiful billboard plastered right in front of her face of Sue's body. She's got the perky breasts, the soft lips, the long hair, and the bright blue eyes. It just breaks Elizabeth's heart. She's like, "I can't go out like this. I don't look good and I don't feel good." I don't blame her because it's hard enough when you feel that way about yourself. but I couldn't imagine being 50 and comparing yourself to someone that's, 25. At this point, we're all thinking the same thing. Like, please just go to the dinner, enjoy your life. You look so beautiful. She runs back to the bathroom and then she starts tucking away her cleavage. She no longer feels like her cleavage is beautiful. She no longer feels like she looks good at all. So she puts a scarf around her neck. She covers up all of her cleavage and then she continues to put more makeup on. She's just layering it and it starts to get aggressive. She has this full-blown meltdown. She looks at the clock. It's now 7:45. She's obviously going to be late or she's not going to make it on time. You don't feel good. Now you're running late. It just keeps compiling. It's really, really tense scene. She finally turns off the light, walks out the door. She gets her coat. She's so close to leaving this time. As she goes to put her hand over her gold handle to the front door, we get this reflection and it's like this fisheye shot of Demi Moore's face and it's really distorted and she looks terrible because obviously it's a skewed image. It's like if you look at yourself in a spoon. And she walked past the billboard without looking at it. So she was so close. She literally got to the front door this time. Elizabeth storms back into the bathroom. She can't leave the house. So she rips off the scarf and genuinely it is really heartbreaking to watch. I get emotional when I talk about it. To me, it's like, Fred, oh my God, I'm going to cry over a movie that I'm not even watching. Fred thinks she's the most beautiful girl in the whole wide world, and she just doesn't feel beautiful. And that's really heartbreaking to me because this could have had a happy ending if it wasn't a fucking body horror movie, So I just wish that she would have got her happy ending. Unfortunately, she heads back into the bathroom. She violently turns on the light switch and starts to tear off her clothes. She starts smudging her makeup. She starts smudging her red lipstick all over her face. She begins to violently rip off her eyelashes and she's like roughing up her hair. Apparently they did this take maybe 15 times and Demi's face was just red raw by the end of it. Obviously, it's a very emotional scene. Like, it makes me want to cry talking about it. And it's a very, very emotional scene. So it would have been really heavy to do that 15 times. And the way that she's like just ripping her face, like it's a really full-on thing to watch. We see her laying in bed, sad, depressed, and her mobile phone starts getting these text messages from Fred. And he's like, hello, are you okay? Like, just checking in on her, like, hey, where are you? I'm here. And that's really, really sad to me as well because we see that Elizabeth is laying down in her robe in bed and she is just catatonic. Like, she feels like she's just dead to the world. She's emotionally fully checked out. We then get a shot of her opening up the fridge and there's this whole roast chicken sitting in the fridge and I don't know why, it just makes me feel sick. I love chicken. I eat chicken all the time, but you just see this roast chicken and it just kind of looks disgusting because we're starting to see it through this negative lens that like food and your body image, that all this stuff really matters because this whole film is so like materialistic and superficial. So even just seeing a chicken on screen in a film like this makes you feel ill. We don't see her take the chicken, but she grabs this massive slice of quiche out and then we cut to the next day. So now we see Sue and she's on the set of Pump It Up. She's hot, she's flexible, and she's performing her routine. She's in her element now. She's used to this 1 week on, 1 week off thing. As she's performing her routine and shaking her ass, she starts to squeal. And all of the cameras call cut. Crew are quite mad at her. They're like, what's going on? What's the problem? And she doesn't really know because she felt something. She felt like a bulge pop out of her ass. So she panics. The guy says, let's bring up camera 2. The operator saw something on the screen. So they are play by playing back this insane close-up shot of Sue's ass. Immediately, she's super uncomfortable and freaks out and she screams to her assistant, get me my robe. Straight back to her comfort outfit, right? It's what Elizabeth wears 24/7. She can't stand there and watch the footage frame by frame, but I'm assuming it was just a hallucination because none of that is actually real. So she grabs her robe and she runs off into her little like studio room. This scene also makes me feel sick. We see Sue in her dressing room. She rips off her robe and then she starts to touch her ass and her thigh and we see this large object under her skin. Sue starts pushing the object like up through her skin, up into her stomach. It's like this large, chunky object and it seems really painful. She slides the object up to her belly button and then she gets her fingers and pushes them inside of her belly button. She pulls out a gooey and juicy roasted chicken drumstick. This is actually a nightmare and this is how we see Sue and Elizabeth's two consciousness start to sink into one. It's making her feel like her body is terrible, like she's overeating, like she's indulging and that like she's going to have repercussions on her body for Elizabeth's actions. So she's literally having nightmares of pulling drumsticks out of herself because she knows that Elizabeth just devoured one the night before. We see Sue wake up next to Elizabeth's body and she looks down at her rotten and damaged finger. Literally couldn't care less. She just enters the lounge room and finds the most unbelievable sight. There is like multiple dinner plates all over the lounge room. The whole roast chicken carcass has been demolished and destroyed. Like she must have just eaten this thing with her bare hands. The house is an absolute mess. So now they're starting to not just disrespect each other, but they're also leaving each other these big messes. They're having parties, they're binge eating, and it's like this little war that starts to break out between the two of them. We then cut to Sue and she's walking on Hollywood Boulevard and she's screaming into the phone at the substance guy. The balance is not working. I barely have time to enjoy myself. She wastes 7 days stuffing her face in front of the TV. And the man just says, remember, there is no she. And then Sue just hangs up. She doesn't have time for it. She's got the shits. Sue finally arrives on set, but it's completely empty. All the lights are off and a crew member says, oh, filming's been cancelled today. Harvey wants to see you in his office. So we see Sue very nervously walking into Harvey's office. Harvey says, all right, I'll get right to the point. We can't keep you on the morning show. Her face drops. My face dropped. I'm like, oh my God, what happened? And then he says, ratings are through the roof. It's phenomenal. People love you and they want more and more. That's why we've decided that you're going to host the New Year's Eve show. There's 50 million viewers. It'll take about a month to pull it off. Are you up for it? Obviously, she's up for it. She's keen. This is all she wants, right? But a month. What about the 1 week on, 1 week off? We then cut to Sue and she's back at home with Elizabeth's body and she takes off the bandage from her spine. We see on Elizabeth's back that the extraction site to get the spinal fluid out is just covered in all these purple veins and pus. It looks really, really unhealthy because she's not taking care of her properly and she's not swapping every 7 days. Sue says to Elizabeth, while she's unconscious, obviously, if you don't open the door when opportunity knocks, you won't get another chance. You of all people know this, right? Just one more day. We then see her repeatedly removing spinal fluid. One more day, just one more day, and she keeps like bursting through the door, all excited in all these cute little outfits. Just one more day, taking more and more spinal fluid from Elizabeth. Then she runs in one day squealing, we're going to be on the cover of Vogue. So at this point, it's like, we're going to be on the cover. Thanks for your sacrifice. Like she's all excited. I just need one more day. At this point, there's so many empty cartridges on the ground, you can't even count. The extraction site is so foul. Sue goes in to extract more of the spinal fluid, but when she takes the bandage off, it is full of pus and it smells so bad that Sue starts to dry reach, but then she just continues to take the spinal fluid out anyway. We then cut to a shot of Sue and she's laying in bed in these really silky black sheets and she's just staring up at the ceiling ecstatic. Like she's so happy with her life and she's so happy with her choices at this point. I don't know what to tell you really. Like we know where this is going. We then cut to a shot of Elizabeth Blake in the shower and her body is literally destroyed. She looks deformed. Her leg is like an old hag. She has half of her head that's fully grey. She's covered in wrinkles. I don't even know how to describe it. So Elizabeth, she's in her robe again and she calls the substance guy and she says, she's stealing more time from me. She's not respecting the balance. She's a selfish bitch. And the man says, you're the Matrix. You can put a stop to the experience. You can just go back to being on your own. And then she says, no, I can't stop. And then she starts to smack herself in the head like, no, no, no. So she's gone crazy. She's lost her mind. She just needs to respect the balance. And she just keeps hitting herself in the head. And the man says, so respect it then. So after he's hung up, we see her hunched over a chair and she's just asleep in the middle of the night with the TV on. She's in so much pain. Her leg is deformed. She can barely move it. She has to pick it up with her hands just to kind of crack the bones back out of place. She finally decides to get up and go look at the box from her studio and she wants to know what the gift was. She opens up the present and she just hears the words, just a little something to keep you busy. And it's a French cookbook. It furthers the feelings of like losing your looks and you're no longer valued in society, like you should just be in the kitchen cooking meals. And the recipes are gross. It's like for brains and pig's ears and blood sausage. Everything in this recipe book is really obscure. It doesn't really matter that the food is disgusting. It's more so just such a diss to give her like this piece of shit cookbook and be like, this will keep you busy. So we see late night on the TV, there's an interview of Sue on like a Tonight Show. And Elizabeth is in the kitchen. She's cooking and she looks like a crazy person. She has on her robe. Her hair is messy. It's grey. She's all deformed. She's all messed up. And she's like talking to herself. She's gone completely insane. So food, again, in this scene will make you sick. It looks absolutely vile. She's cooking pig ears and blood sausage, and Demi Moore is like really funny. Like, this scene to me just shows how versatile she is as an actor. She can be so meaningful and she can bring such a sadness or a beautifulness to her roles. And then in this, she's just insane. She looks back over at the TV and the host asks Sue, rumor has it you're up for Tom Grant's new movie and that you're going to be the host of the New Year's Eve show. And she says, yes, I am. And then proceeds to make up a story about being from like a really small town. It's so small, it's pretty much a farm. Like, she's so full of shit. Meanwhile, we cut to Elizabeth and she starts setting things on fire in the kitchen. It is absolutely chaos. She starts mocking Sue back and forth. And they bring up the fact that Sue has replaced Elizabeth Sparkle. The interviewer says, you stepped in and rocked our world. Are you a fan of her show? And Sue says, I can't really say that I actually watched her show. We're not really from the same generations. Actually, like Jurassic Fitness, really. Elizabeth is tearing apart a raw duck and she screams, come get your fucking Jurassic Fitness. And she rips these guts out of this raw duck like a psychopath. And then she grabs this electrical egg beater and she starts whisking and beating these eggs. And the yolk is flying all over her face, her dressing gown, the kitchen walls. Absolute maniac. It's so ridiculous in the moment, but if you think about the hatred that they had towards themselves and the situation that they're in, you kind of would be going crazy. You would be at this point. Now you're this deformed old woman especially. You'd be so off it. She just keeps talking to herself. You wouldn't exist without me. Like, she hates Sue at this point. The host asks one final question. Tell us your little beauty secret. And Elizabeth walks over to the TV and she's dripping in egg yolk. She undoes her robe and flashes herself naked at the TV. And then she screams, say it, say it. Tell him what your little beauty secret is. Sue replies, I always try to lead with my heart and be grateful. And Elizabeth starts picking up eggs and just throwing them full pelt at the TV. And then she starts spiraling and having this massive outburst. And she uses all of the sticky food that's all over the walls and the windows to stick newspaper all over that big, beautiful window to cover up the billboards entirely. Can you imagine like rotten food all over your window and then newspapers stuck on the top? It looks disgusting. We then cut to Elizabeth and she's laying in the shower this time. So we have this overhead shot of her and she's just smashing her head on the ground. She's going, stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it. We cut to the next morning. This is my favorite line of the entire film, purely just because of how it's delivered. So I hope I can do it justice. We start to get interior shots of the apartment and it is covered in food debris. And she's standing there in her cute little underwear and her crop top. Sue screams at the top of her lungs, you have to control yourself. Sue is obviously disgusted, right? She's in the apartment. She's looking around. She can't take it anymore. She's had enough. So Sue says, I can't go back inside of her. I can't. Like, she's distressed. Sue starts bringing in all of these large glass jars into the bathroom and puts them down next to Elizabeth's body. And she starts calling Elizabeth gross and old and fat and disgusting. And we see Sue on her hands and knees extracting every last drop of spinal fluid that Elizabeth has in her body. She fills up like over 20 jars of this milky white substance. It's vile, it's horrible, the needle is super thick. We get to see everything. You don't cut away once. So we can only imagine the repercussion of this, right? She's like, I'm never going back inside her body. It bleeds her dry of all of her spinal fluid. If I haven't already mentioned, I'm doing a mini series of substance makeup looks over on my Instagram. So if you're interested in checking that out, it's also going to drop today. I won't be able to do like matching makeup looks every time there's a podcast episode, but when it's fitting like the substance or ones that I have coming up in future, I'm definitely going to try to like correlate the two. We fast forward and Sue has been happily living for 3 whole months. Nighttime, she's looking out at the city. It's all lit up. We now see the billboard of herself. The apartment's spotless. And there's a poster of Sue in her New Year's Eve dress. It's this bright blue, elegant dress. We zoom out to this bouquet of red roses sent from the production company and it says, break a leg, they are going to love you. Whereas Elizabeth had, you were amazing. Now Sue has, they're going to love you. Sue has this handsome boyfriend and he cuddles her. He walks up to her and he says, are you coming to bed? And Sue's like, yeah, I'll be right there. And at the bottom of the poster, we get this close-up shot that says tomorrow at 9 p.m. So Sue starts to experience the ringing in her ears and then she starts getting blood dripping from her nose. So she starts tripping and falling and running down the hallway frantically. She goes into the bathroom to get more spinal fluid from Elizabeth. She goes to extract the spinal fluid. The injection site that looks so foul. And except this time, instead of a milky white fluid coming out, we get this brown and black fluid with blood in it. So Sue calls the substance guy crying. She says, "This is an emergency. There's no more stabilizer fluid." The man just says, "Well, you've reached the end. If you want more, you need to regenerate. You simply have to switch to continue to enjoy the experience." So Sue starts dry reaching. She looks down at Elizabeth and the thought of going back into her body makes her so sick. So she's like, "Ugh, no, I can't go back." Ears are ringing and she falls to the ground. She has no other choice. Like, she literally has to switch back now or she's going to die. So she puts the switching tubing in, the blood starts going back and forth. We see her switch back into Elizabeth's body. Her boyfriend's like, "Sue, where are you?" Remember, he's like waiting for her in bed and she's spiraling out of control. "Are you alright, babe? Are you stressed out about tomorrow?" This is the greatest reveal of the movie. We see Elizabeth's deformed and aged body. She steps out onto the white tiles. There's blood all over the ground because Sue is bleeding from her nose. She slams the door shut and locks it. Boyfriend starts banging on the door and he looks down and goes, "Oh, are you cranky because of your lady business? Like, come on, let me in," thinking she's just stressed. We see Elizabeth turn around and she looks at herself in the mirror. Demi is completely unrecognizable. She has a full body of prosthetic on, literally head to toe. She has a bald cap, this enlarged nose, these huge earlobes, a big hunch on her back, and she has these tits that are sagging down to her stomach pretty much. So she's hunched over, she has these brown teeth, she's completely bald, and she looks like she's 120 years old. The reality of the situation really starts to sink in. Like, she's ruined forever, even if she was to stop the experiment. Elizabeth screams at the boyfriend, "Get out! Get the fuck out, just leave me alone." And then she just spits up all of this foam onto the ground and he freaks out like, who's this, and runs butt ass naked out the apartment. She's so fragile. She opens the door and she starts to walk down the hallway and her bones all start to break and snap. So she like collapses on the ground and we get this insane shot of her back and her spine with all these hunches and like her tiny little ass. She just looks not human at this point. Like 3 months of no regeneration, you could never imagine how bad she would look unless you actually saw it. So she's on the ground, her bones are breaking, she gets up and she can barely walk down the hallway. She calls the substance guy immediately and says, "I want to order a termination. I want to stop the experience." The man says, "Are you sure? You can't go back once you stop." And she screams, "I want to fucking stop." She orders the kit. The man says it'll be dispensed tomorrow. This part makes me sad. With every ounce of her energy, she goes into the spare room and she drags that really heavy framed poster of herself out. That's all she has to hold on to now. So she drags this picture of herself back out that she once had framed on the wall that Sue had hidden away. She just wants to admire it and look at herself again. It's almost like at this point, after everything she's been through, she can finally see how beautiful she was now that it has been completely taken away. She's finally realizing that she was beautiful, she was perfect. And I feel like this is what happens to us as we age. We're so critical of our bodies at the age we're at. We get to 20, we get to 30, we get to 40, and then, we're 40 and we're like, fuck, when I was 20, I was beautiful. But you kind of spend your entire 20s hating your body and hating how you look. When you get to 80, you look back at yourself through your whole life and realize that you were beautiful the whole time, that you should have been kind to yourself the whole time. So I just love the symbolism. I love how genuine that is, and that now she's this old creature. She just wants to be 45 again, she just wants to be beautiful like that. Elizabeth wakes up and she covers herself like head to toe. She wears multiple pairs of stockings. She wears a headscarf to cover her head. She wears the yellow trench coat again, and she runs down the staircase like an absolute animal. She's on a mission to get the termination kit. She gets back home and she drags Sue's body from the bathroom into the lounge room. This is a really great scene. She was really fragile, but at this point she's lost it. So she just gets like all of this adrenaline. She drags Sue's body down the staircase, smashing Sue's head on every single step. She didn't give a fuck about Sue's body anymore. She's throwing her all around the place and dragging her by her limbs. All of that like kindness and love that she had for Sue is completely gone. She fucking hates this bitch. She grabs out the termination kit with a note that says, "We're sorry you didn't appreciate your experience with the substance." She puts this large needle into the syringe and hears a voice inside her head. "Are you sure? Once you stop, you can't go back. You will simply remain on your own." She stabs Sue directly in her heart and starts to inject the black fluid. We hear Sue's heartbeat slow. She only gets about halfway through the syringe when she decides to stop. She looks over at the table and sees the roses with the note that says, "They're gonna love you." After all of this, Elizabeth can't let go of that fame, of that feeling and of that external validation. So this for me was another thing that made me cry, just because of Demi Moore's deliverance of the lines and how deep and meaningful it is to say these things out loud. And she says, I can't do this. I need you because I hate myself. You've got to get ready. It's our big night. They're going to love you so much. You're the only lovable part of me. You have to come back. And she has this entire meltdown. Like, she's just decided that actually, no, she does want to be Sue at any cost. Elizabeth starts to perform CPR on Sue and her nose starts to pour out with blood. Elizabeth's really smart for this. She grabs the swapping tubes and she attaches the tube into Sue's heart and into her wrist. And the blood starts running from tube to tube into each other's bodies. Sue spits out all of this blood onto Elizabeth's face and wakes up. Sue sits the fuck up. You don't know what to say. They're both awake at once. A shared consciousness, they're both awake and then looking at each other. And this like really shocked me. I didn't think we were going to get a moment like this in the film. And I was just thinking, this is so cool. This movie is so cool. So Sue wakes up. Sue sees the termination kit on the ground. We get this insane fight scene between the two of them. Sue chases Elizabeth and kicks her so hard across the room into that framed picture of herself that the glass smashes everywhere and it shatters. Elizabeth runs down the hallway as fast as she can and tries to lock herself in the bathroom. And Sue is like the angriest bitch I've ever seen in my entire life. I'm so scared of Margaret Qualley in this scene. She is kicking down the door, screaming like barbaric. She is angry. She's so full of rage. She kicks down the door and she grabs Elizabeth by the back of her head and starts smashing it on the basin sink. Her teeth are falling out and breaking. Her nose breaks. All of her cheekbones and her face start to break. She's literally caving her fucking head in. And it's like a really insane moment because you don't know when it's going to stop, but it just doesn't stop. It just keeps going. She falls backwards, smashes her head on the tiles. You hear her skull bounce off the tiles. It's not enough. Sue picks her up, makes her look at herself in the mirror, and then just starts smashing her face into the mirror. And there is blood pissing everywhere. We get this one shot that made me feel sick. It's a shot of Demi Moore's legs with her little stockings on, and her legs just start shaking and convulsing. Sue just like drops her like a sack of shit. Sue stands there as she watches Elizabeth like crawl her way out of the bathroom. She's crawling down the hallway. She's covered in blood. She can't breathe. Like, she's coughing up teeth. She crawls out to the staircase. Sue kicks her in the guts as she rolls down the staircase. Elizabeth tries to stand back up and Sue just like Tarzan kicks Elizabeth into this glass table that just shatters everywhere. Like, glass obviously all goes back. She's bleeding the fuck out. And just when you think it literally can't get any worse, we get this incredible shot from the ground as if we are Elizabeth looking up at Sue, and she is kicking Elizabeth as hard as she fucking can repeatedly. She is kicking her and kicking her and kicking her, and there is blood spurting everywhere from all of damage on her body, from her mouth. Sue's hair is dripping wet in blood. Her entire face, her beautiful nightgown that she had on, is literally covered in blood. And we get this shot, we zoom out, we see Elizabeth's body bleeding out on that beautiful beige carpet. Overkilled her to an extreme that I haven't seen a young woman beat the fuck out of an old lady like this. So it's like really hard to watch, especially when you know she's doing it to herself. Like, she's killing herself because she hates herself so much. We hear this voice, remember you are one. Elizabeth takes her last breath and dies. Her old carcass is just laying on the ground in all this glass and all this blood. Sue is like catatonic. She doesn't really understand what she's done by killing the Matrix version of herself, and she walks over to the window and looks at the billboard of herself. It says New Year's Eve party, and we zoom in and it says tonight, 9 p.m. We cut to later that night and it's finally time to celebrate the big New Year's Eve party. This is the moment she's been waiting for. 50 million views. They have this whole live audience. We see the stage set up with these burlesque dancers. They have their tits out. She's in her beautiful blue gown, getting all of her hair and makeup done, and then her ears start to ring. Sue gets up and runs into the studio bathroom and she's coughing and her tooth falls out into the sink. Sue has also lost her mind at this point and she looks into the mirror and she starts to pull out her four front teeth because they're wobbly. So she smiles and she has this single tear running down her face, and they don't cut away, and you just see her up close ripping each tooth out of the gum. And you're like, what are you doing? Even if they're loose, don't do that. Why are you doing that? She drops them into the sink. There's blood all over the white sink. There's teeth everywhere. And now she literally just has gums. Without the Matrix, Sue starts to rapidly deteriorate. Like, this happens very, very quickly. She starts to squeal and she's spitting up blood. Meanwhile, there's crew banging on the bathroom door like, hey, Sue, we need you on stage. We got to set up the light. She's like, okay, I'll meet you there. And just like washes away the blood and all the truth down the drain. Sue starts running down this hallway. She runs into Harvey and all of these shareholders. And now they've all got suits on and they're these gross old men. They're super creepy and they're just dying to meet her. They're so excited. Harvey says, is everything okay? And she goes, like she didn't just rip her teeth out. So smile. Pretty girls should always smile. And she has this single tear come out of her eye again. And she smiles with her mouth closed. The men don't care about her, obviously. All of these topless burlesque dancers start running past all of the men. They're like, oh, feathers. And then they all just run off in that direction. We see Sue enter a really small elevator. And as she goes to press the button to the floor that she wants to go to, her fingernail bends back. She peels it off. She rips off her own fingernail. You don't even have a moment to understand what's going on. And then out of nowhere, her fucking ear falls off and she catches her ear in her hand. So we're hearing like these squelching noises and this man enters the elevator and he presses his button. He's in a suit. He's really polite and he goes, hey, you ready for tonight? His voice sounds all distorted. She's literally falling apart. So no, she's not excited for tonight. He gets out of the elevator and then Sue gets to her floor. We get this really cool shot on like a handheld camera. Margaret's holding the camera herself, so Sue is running in this dress and she's running down the street from the studio back to her house. She's got like half of that vial at home of the substance, leftover activator, the vial that specifically says discard after use. She has a little bit of it left. She races back home. She rips off her beautiful dress and she starts like combing through the cupboards like a maniac. She finds the leftover vial and she injects herself and she starts crying and screaming. So she's naked. She's got no teeth, no ear. She's screaming at herself in the mirror. And she's like, please give me a better version of myself. Please, please. And she falls over and her head smacks onto the tiles. This really cool close-up shot of her eye, but instead of 2 irises popping up, you get like 8 irises like spontaneously popping up in each eye at once. It's really, really violent. Her back rips open much faster and more aggressively than it did in the original transition. We then get the tunnel of light sequence again, except this time it's really rapid and distorted. It's not as beautiful. It's not like this nice little journey. It almost feels like you're being dragged to hell. Like everything's distorted and it's flying at you with all these horrible noises. It's definitely not the beautiful experience that it was before. We get this amazing POV and it's Sue's beautiful naked body split open on the ground. There's green vial and blood all over the floor. All we can hear is like grunting and this muffled breathing. Again, the sound effects in this really sell the practical effects and what's going on in the storyline. The new Sue stands up and she goes to look at herself in the mirror and then she hides from her own reflection because you're like, holy, what the fuck was that? Like she's this big monster, like this huge deformed basket case looking monster. She goes back to the mirror. We start to get a closer look up of herself. She is beyond unrecognizable. So Margaret Qualley is underneath all these prosthetics. It's like she's a human cancer. She's full of growths. She's covered in veins. She has all these extra limbs. And on the back of her shoulder is Elizabeth's face. So you literally have Elizabeth, like Demi Moore's face, on the back of this hunched back monster that's looking in the mirror with all these extra limbs. She's missing ears. She has eyeballs on the back of her head. It's truly insane. Like the design of this is incredible. Elizabeth's face is like gagging and struggling to breathe. So she's kind of conscious as well, but she can't really speak. This is great. We get an overlay from the beginning of the film and the audio from the 2 men in the audition room are saying, looks like everything sure is in the right place this time. These full body prosthetics are absolutely incredible. And the amount of detail that went into filming this is just insane. I can't wait to talk to you about it more at the end. So I will be deep diving and breaking into that as well. If you've made it this far, then I'm sure you want to know. We then get a title card on the screen, Monstro Elisa Sue, and she vomits up this green vial all over her feet. So we get a shot of her legs and like her spine is almost on the outside of her body. The monster has this really strained breathing and makes these grunt noises. And Monstro Elisa Sue starts to walk around. She goes back into her bedroom and she puts on her blue dress. Obviously, it's not going to fit her because she's like 3 times bigger than what she was. So she starts to rip the dress and pull it up over Demi Moore's face. She just covers her up entirely. She sits down on her vanity and then she proceeds to get her cute little like silver earrings and she presses them into her deformed skull. She doesn't have ears anymore, so she just presses it into like the cancerous mass that's on her face and kind of like jingles it all excited because she feels pretty. Truly insane that she finally comes to terms with what she looks like and she's like, this is it. This is me. I still want to have my moment to shine. It took her to the point of becoming a monster to finally just be like, this is all I got and I appreciate it. So she has like one little strand of hair and she tries to curl it with a curling iron and it literally melts and snaps off. And she just looks at it like, huh? Like really surprised. Now, this is fucking crazy. This part of the film takes a really hard turn into a different direction. So up until this point, as I said, it's been somewhat of like a horror comedy with like a sci-fi vibe to it. And if I had a different ending, it could have almost been an entirely different movie. But I do like the direction that they went with it because it is a body horror and it is very literally showing you the repercussions of the substance. Monstro Elisa Sue goes into the lounge room. She starts breaking and smashing open that framed photo of Demi Moore. It's quite a large picture, so she cuts out the face, huge face of Demi Moore and super glues it on top of her own face. And then she proceeds to apply red lipstick on the drawing. Like, okay, I look great now. I'm ready to go. You hear the audio playing over the top as she's putting the lipstick on. Pretty girl should always smile. So this is like a whole horror montage at the end, which is why I absolutely love it. But on my first watch, I had no idea what was going on. I just didn't think the film was going in this direction. So it surprised me. And this was just an incredible experience being in a cinema with so many people feeling the same way, like laughing, crying, screaming. We're all like, what is going on, right? Nobody knows what the hell is happening at this point. We cut to Monstro stomping on the pavement. She's running as fast as she can back to the studio. This is kind of a dream sequence where a member of the cast opens the door and goes, oh, at last, we're all worried. We've been looking for you. And like lets Monstro in as if she's Sue. And the entire hallway of her career is full of all these people and paparazzi and they're cheering and they're clapping. We love you. You're irreplaceable. But then they all just fade away. And it's an empty, dark, orange hallway. There's a child dressed up as Sue, like in her little blue princess outfit, and like everyone's really excited. There'd probably be like 200 people in this live audience. Harvey says to the investors that are sitting next to him, she's my most beautiful creation. I've shaped her for success. I don't have to say much. Like he obviously didn't fucking do anything, but he's like, I shaped her for success, taking all the credit. We see all these bright lights and we have this like moment of silence where we have no idea what's about to happen. You hear the struggled breathing and the grunting with the heavy footsteps of Monstro, and she walks out onto the stage. Monstro tries to speak into the microphone. I'm so glad you could be here with me tonight. And she's like making these pig noises and grunting, and she goes, I've missed you all so much. The picture of Elizabeth's face just falls off, so we get a proper reveal of her on stage. Monstro looks like she's struggling. Her eye socket, where her eye should have been, starts to contort and open up, and it pushes out a breast that falls onto the ground. And I didn't mention this, but when she was walking out onto the stage, she also had like a uterus and an entire placenta with a cord dragging behind her. So I don't really believe that's meant to symbolize like a mother and daughter relationship, although it does kind of feel that way sometimes with like Elizabeth cleaning up after Sue's mess. It's just her fighting herself and fighting her own battles. But now she's just like this deformed creature, like a baby mixed between the two of them. And it's definitely like a creation that was never meant to happen, right? So she pushes this breast out of her eye and the boob just falls onto the ground. It's really fucking disgusting. She's on stage and all people want to see is tits. Like they have burlesque dancers out the back that are topless that are about to come on, and it's like she tries to do a speech, it doesn't work, and then she just goes, all right, here's a tit. It's so literal. All of the audience members start to freak out. They stand up and they start screaming, it's a monster. kill it. They're losing their minds. They're running around. They're screaming. And they start pushing her on the stage and she's crying, no, it's still me. I'm here. It's Elizabeth. I'm Sue. It's me. And it makes me so sad because like she finally loves herself and she finally feels beautiful. And then they're all calling her a freak. And a member of the audience runs up, grabs the microphone pole, and he smashes her over the head with it. And her entire head explodes. The man gets covered from head to toe in blood, in like the thickest amount of blood that I've ever seen. Her carcass falls to the ground, but then it starts to continue to multiply. Like a cancer, like she starts creating this new baby monstro head. There is like 5 different heads. There's 5 different versions of monstro because she keeps like growing and changing and forming and duplicate. So there's like blobs of flesh everywhere. Her arms just start to like fall off and she sprays the entire audience back and forth. They used a fire hose to do this. And she sprays like 200 people in the audience head to toe in blood while this heavy metal music plays. Monstro is like standing on stage and she's like twirling around as if she's doing a little dance where she's just spraying people and covering them with blood. We hear a voiceover that says, I wish those boobs were in the middle of her face instead of that nose. Pretty girls should always smile. At 50, it stops. So Monstro starts to walk down the hallway. There's just 2 pictures of Sue. There's the Pump It Up with Sue and there's the New Year's Eve poster. That's as far as she got in her career because she couldn't respect the balance. So Monstro is stomping down the hallway. All of the walls are covered in blood. It's very much looking like The Shining. She starts stomping down into the street until like her leg just breaks off. She falls over and explodes into like this huge pile of goo. And there's literally like nothing left of Monstro. She is completely destroyed. Literally all that's left is Elizabeth's face in this pile of goo. She detaches herself from the body and she starts to crawl across the pavement onto her star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. After all of this, she just can't let go of that fame. She needs that identity. She needs that validation. And the way I was like smiling and screaming because I just couldn't believe that this is how the movie ended. Like she turned into a monster. She felt beautiful. She exploded. And then all that's left is Elizabeth's face. We get this nice peaceful moment where she's looking up at the stars and the night sky and the palm trees. We hear all this cheering and she starts to see glitter falling down on her. You're so beautiful. We love you, Elizabeth. And she no longer has a body and she just feels free. And it's such a powerful statement that she just passes away on top of her star looking up at the sky. We get a shot of the next day and we see this street cleaner just driving over the star. It cleans up all of that red sludge and just keeps chugging along. We get the title card, The Substance, the screen cuts to black, and that is the fucking end. We have so much to unpack with all the practical effects and everything that went into the behind the scenes of this film, but I feel like we just need to take a moment to let that sink in, how insane that movie was. The fact that she had nothing left. She had no body, no fame, and she was still clinging on to that star. The ending really threw me the first time I watched the film. I was not expecting it to end like that. It's almost like a weird dream sequence, but it definitely happened. The more that I sat on it and the more that I thought about it, the more I started to love and appreciate the film. So I have a quote from Coralie. The violence that I put onto the bodies in this film reflects the violence that I feel regarding these issues and the violence that we do to our own bodies. Monstro is really, to me, a kind of liberation. I think the movie is all about how it is to feel monstrous, whatever you look like. It's the first time where she actually loves herself and looks at herself with tenderness. And it's the moment where she feels like it's okay. I'm ready to go outside. I want people to look at me and I have my place in the world. This film has a really heavy message and it definitely weighs on you. Once you watch it, it kind of sticks with you for life. And the more that you watch it, the more you love and appreciate it. I try to look at it and remember all of the good messages throughout the film. The way that when Elizabeth was an old hag, she dragged her old photo out of her in her 40s just to admire herself again. So I just hope that I can look at myself and my body through those eyes and have that like love and understanding that we all age. Coralie said that true cinema is when you don't need to say much. What it is to be a true star, what it is to be seen and worshipped and to be loved. Coralie and Demi really connected over similar shared experiences in their own lives as aging women in the industry. When they first met, Coralie explained to Demi in detail how committed she would have to be for this role. Coralie showed her all of the design concepts and the storyboarding, which she all does herself. She explained to Demi that it's going to be filmed in more of an indie way with quite a restricted budget and a much smaller crew. It's not a big Hollywood production, despite the whole film being based around that. Now, this is something I personally find really crazy, but The Substance was not filmed in Hollywood. It wasn't even filmed in America. The entire film was shot in France. France. I find it so interesting because you would never know. Watching this film, you just assume that it's Hollywood. Coralie said that France loves cinema. It isn't just a job for the crew. They love creating movies and they love creating art. I think that's so cool. Usually for people working in this industry, it's not just a job for them. It is their entire life and they love it and they put every ounce of their being into it, which I really, really respect. And I think it's such a cool choice to film a movie about Hollywood in France with her own production crew with all the people that she knows and loves and trusts. Coralie said, I created my own Hollywood. I don't need the real LA view. All I need is a palm tree and a blue sky. This is a very simple image that is so strong. It says, yes, this is the place of dreams and happiness. Over 300 prosthetics were custom made for this film. From prosthetic breasts to full body suits, nearly all of the transformations were achieved through practical effects. The prosthetics were made by a company called Pop FX, led by Pierre-Olivier Persin, and they had a dedicated 15-person team that worked for 11 months in pre-production to design and fabricate the film's extensive prosthetics. The team's commitment to the practical effects over digital enhancements contributed to the film's visceral impact and realism that you see. Demi Moore spent up to 6.5 hours each day in the makeup chair to become the decaying Elizabeth Sparkle. The prosthetics team crafted intricate designs to depict the character's physical deterioration, reflecting on the film's theme of aging. They used bladder effects and silicone layering to create realistic bubbling, pulsing, and tearing of thick skin, like old school Cronenberg style, but mixed with more modern techniques. Margaret Qualley wore a full body prosthetic, often spending upwards of 7 hours in the makeup chair to become Monstrous Lisa suit. I couldn't imagine as an actor how fun that would be, but also how challenging and draining it would be. Margaret said she felt like she was melting into the character by the end of it. The final Monstro costume included 5 different heads, 2 full body suits, and various prosthetic elements. Blood was its whole own category for production in this film. There were multiple types of blood created for the substance. Over 136,000 liters of fake blood were used. That's enough to fill like a small swimming pool, and that was sprayed over an entire audience of extras. This practical effect was achieved by using a fire hose rigged with fake blood, and the commitment in this film deserves so much recognition, which it did rightfully get. The substance won an incredible amount of awards throughout the entire team. The team's exceptional work was recognized with the 2025 Academy Award for Best Makeup and Hairstyling. They got Best Film, Best Director, Best Actress, Best Supporting Actress, Best Original Screenplay. The 2025 Golden Globe Award for Best Actress in a Motion Picture went to Demi Moore, and honestly, the list just goes on. It's never ending. It's still winning awards now. What I love about this movie so much more than the message and the insane gore is just all of the close-up shots. For me, that was what really made it stand out. These hero shots that Coralie was really obsessive about just drew me in. It really made it a film like something I'd never seen before. The prawn eating scene, the doorknob sequence, the teeth getting pulled out. I've just never seen anything quite like it, and I hope that this is like the new standard for films. I've never really seen a film like The Substance. I haven't really seen a lot of body horror in my life. It's not like a genre that I usually go for within the genres of horror itself. So when I saw the movie together recently this year, that's going to be an episode coming up on the pod. I think that's going to be episode 4 possibly, so really soon. It's up there with one of my favorites. It's almost like the couples version of The Substance, and I can't wait to get into that with you. But that's also a body horror and it's modern, and I just can't get over how much I loved it as well. I was like, wow, maybe I'm like really into body horror now, so I really need to start revisiting older films. But I just love the way that Coralie did this in particular. To get all of these hero shots, Coralie actually created a studio space called The Lab, and this is where they would film all of the close-ups without any of the actors. They had the shot of the olive getting stabbed in the martini glass. They had the shot of Coralie actually injecting her own arm with the substance. These are the shots of the torsos with the moving elements inside the bodies. I'd love to know what you thought of The Substance, because obviously it's a film that matters so much to me and everyone has a different interpretation of it, but I have watched a lot of behind the scenes, a lot of interviews. I'm going to have to wrap up this episode because I could talk about this film for the rest of my life. It is truly one of my favorite movies that I've ever seen, and watching all of the behind the scenes of Coralie talk about how she wrote, directed, and edited this film makes me appreciate it even more and understand it from her perspective. So I tried to add a lot of that in this video today. I hope that you learned something new, and I hope that this gave you a new perspective and love for the film, and hopefully you rewatch it with a different view. I'd love to know what you thought of the film. So if you're watching this on YouTube, please comment below if you like it, if you hated it, how you feel about it. Maybe you're going to go rewatch it again after listening to my podcast and see it from a different light. I'd love to know if your perspective changes and if you can kind of appreciate it more for what it is now that you know the story behind all of the symbolism. symbolism. In next week's episode, I'll be covering my favorite horror movies of all time. So obviously it's October. I feel like that's a good place to start. I think I'm going to be covering about 70 movies in total, but it's going to be a bit of a quick run through. I'm hoping all my episodes go for about 2 hours because I love long form content. That's why I'm here. This is what I love to do. So I'm going to be covering my top 10, my top 20. I'm also going to be chucking in about 20 or 30 films that are just lighthearted. They're not in the horror genre, but I feel like it's nice to add that in there. I've got some staples that I want to put on to you guys, and it is Halloween season, so there is no excuse for not watching any good new horror films that you haven't seen. Don't forget to check out my TikTok and my Instagram for all of my makeup looks throughout the month of October. I'm really excited to show you guys my Substance mini-series, so go check that out after this if you haven't seen it already. I appreciate you so much if you made it to the end. Hooray, you're officially a creep now. Welcome to the Corban Creeps family. It means so much to me, and I'm just so stoked that I'm starting this new journey. I hope to see you in my next one. Please take care. Don't forget to check out my socials at Bonnie Corbett SFX, and I'll be talking to you next time. Bye.